Welcome to the Women's Connection. I'm Barrie-Louise Switzen, your moderator. The Women's Connection is a program about events shaping women's lives and helping one gain authentic power on a personal or professional level. So won't you stay tuned? Our guest here, Dayna Steele, has the VIP life in the rock world. And I got to tell you, I read her book, and it is incredible. And I want to share it with you and her, answering any kind of questions that you might have as far as how to start a business, how to get notoriety, and how to succeed in the rock world as well as in business in general. And I would like to welcome Dayna. Dayna Steele,
Thank
welcome.
You so much. Thank you. I am so happy to be in this city. I just, I'm alive anywhere. I'm pretty hyper as it is, but I love New York.
You've done a lot of things. What would you say is the greatest lesson that you have learned along the way?
You have to follow your passion. You cannot do things for the money. You can't do it for the prestige, or you can't do it because it's what your parents want you to do, or your friends want you to do, or it's what your spouse wants you to do, or your significant other. You have to do whatever it is you do, whether it's in a relationship or it's in business, your lifelong career, what you're going to major in college, whatever. It has to be here. It has to be in your heart. I tried so many things. I mean, from as far back as second grade, I wanted to be a rock star. Not necessarily a music rock star, but I wanted to be successful. I had this drive to do something, and I don't sing, I can't dance, I have 2 left feet, I can't play a musical instrument. I tried sports, I tried it all. And in college, there was actually a DJ who dared me to audition for the new student radio station.
Fabulous.
And to tell you the truth, I really wanted to go out with this guy, so that's the only reason I did it. But the minute I put on the headphones, I knew I was home. And from that point on, I worked 24/7. I think it was $2.15 an hour, filing records. Sometimes I have to explain what a record is. I think they finally gave me a full-time shift just so I would go away. But follow your passion, because no matter what you do, it's not always a bed of roses. There's going to be bad things, there's going to be tedious tasks, and passion gets you through all that and gives you the energy to keep trying things.
In your book, Rock to the Top, you talk about that. You also talk about what sustains a good business. Would you like to share some of that?
There's several things that go into sustaining a good business. I say, everybody wants to be a rock star at something, but not everybody wants to do the work involved.
Right.
It takes a lot of hard work. It takes a lot of thought. I say there are 4 principles to, I call them the rock star principles, like the 4 corners of your stage, your stage for success. The first is passion. You've got to be doing something you love, because it makes it a lot. Hard work is hard enough without doing something you love. Don't do something you hate. The second thing is knowledge. Not only in your industry, I would read every trade paper, I would read everything I could get my hands on, but I also read politics and business and pop culture. It not only makes you a more interesting person to be around, and you can add to any conversation at any water cooler anywhere, but you have the ability to recognize opportunities, and you learn new things, and you find out what's going on in the world around you. The third principle is networking. And I'm here right now to say networking is not giving your business card out at a happy hour. Like, I call them the business card psychos. Here, want my card. Networking is building relationships, and relationships are everything. They really are. I mean, you've heard that it's not what you know, it's who you know.
Right.
And in this city with acting and showbiz and the whole thing, but that holds true with any business. It's the relationships that get you where you're going. And then the 4th principle is appreciation. So many people, I don't care who you are, where you are, what you do, how big you are, how popular, how rich, how famous, you didn't get there alone. And you got to remember to say thank you to people.
What have you found to be the best way to say thank you to somebody?
You can send a text message, you can tweet somebody, you can say thank you on Facebook, you can send an email, but nothing has the power of just pen to paper. I don't care how much postage goes up, you need to write a handwritten thank you note.
In your book, you talk about how the rock bands have become so successful. And it was interesting to show that they were so attentive to the minute details of something. And one of your stories you were relaying was about, I believe it was Kiss, Gene Simmons, and where they don't want brown M&Ms.
Oh, no, that was Van Halen, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Van Halen. Van Halen had a really diva kind of reputation in the rock world because one of the stipulations in their rider, now when a band performs a concert, there's a contract that states how much they're going to be paid, etc., all the stipulations, and then there's a rider. The rider states everything from stage requirements and lighting requirements to, you know, what kind of furniture and food in the dressing room. And Van Halen's rider said absolutely no brown M&Ms. If there were brown M&Ms, the band could leave the venue and still get paid full payment without paying a show.
I thought that was
without
great.
playing a show. And of course they got this wild rock and roll, what difficult rock and rollers they were. But the real reason they did it was because if they walked into the dressing room at sound check and there were brown M&Ms in the bowl, chances are the promoter had not read the rider or had blown off the rider, which meant the stage was not safe for the band. And the band, this was the first band traveling with 7 semis full of equipment.
Oh my gosh.
And, you know, the speaker stacks and all of that. And so odds were that the lighting trusses were not hung to the right specifications and the stage couldn't take the weight. So their production manager, their road manager, everybody would go back over the rider line by line by line and check everything to make sure the stage was safe before the band went on.
I think that was so fabulous.
Yeah, it was
I mean,
smart.
it was just
It was really
absolutely
brilliant.
Brilliant business decision to do something like that.
But of course they never let that story out until later on because, you know, that's the whole point of rock and roll is bad boys and, you know, sex, drugs, and bad boys and bad girls. And when it comes right down to it, it's really a business.
Yes.
A multi-million. The Rolling Stones are a Fortune 500 company.
That's amazing.
You know, Mick Jagger is the CEO.
I was wondering, rock bands are so successful because they do consider themselves a business.
If you're not making sure all of the pieces are put together every single day,
Right.
you know, watching your finances and taking care of those 4 principles, but also working on your branding and being consistent with what you're doing. I've seen a lot of great musicians. I've heard a lot of incredible music, but they haven't gone on to be as successful. And I don't see them treat it like the business it is. I mean, somebody like Sammy Hagar, everybody thinks Sammy's this wild party dude. You know, Sammy's up at 6 a.m. He's doing morning radio. He knows what T-shirts they're selling, the tour. He sold his tequila company last year for like $73 million, and the man doesn't even drink tequila.
Ah!
He doesn't have to sing I Can't Drive 55 ever again in his whole life, but he does it because it's his passion.
What transpired in your life that you went in a new direction from this glamorous VIP life that we'll get back to in a minute, that you'd started a website for NASA, e-commerce?
Well, it's a networking story I tell that not only is networking building relationships, but it's doing things for others without expecting anything in return. David Crosby of Crosby, Stills and Nash was a guest of the great state of Texas for about 8 months because he thought it would be a really good idea to have drugs and guns backstage at a concert. When he got out of prison, he was in a halfway house in Houston for a few months. And his manager called me. I'd met him through somebody. I didn't know him that well, but he said, David needs a dentist. He's there in Houston. I've called a couple of people. They won't help me unless David gives an exclusive interview. And this is the first time David's really been sober since he was 11 or 12 years old. He's terrified. He wants to be left alone. He doesn't want to do any interviews. Long story, David and I started talking. You know, he got a little lonely, got a little bored. He started coming to the radio station and hanging out and telling the most amazing stories about Graham Nash and Joni Mitchell and Neil Young and, you know, the early days. And we got to be really good friends. And when Crosby, Stills and Nash came through on their first tour after David got out of prison, their first major tour, David called me and he said, you know, there's a lot of astronauts who want to come to the show. He befriended some of them. He got to know a lot of the astronauts. He said, can you handle this? And I'm here to tell you it's like herding cats. It's a bunch of engineers. You know, they can get to the space station. They can't get to the will call window. So one of the astronauts brought one of the pilots with her, Charlie Justice, because he was a huge fan. And in my real life, I'm Mrs. Charlie Justice. So you never know when you do something for somebody how it's going to all come around in your life. I had my first child. And when I was pregnant with Dak, you know, it was before Angelina Jolie and everybody else made it really, you know, sexy and cool to be pregnant. And as a female rock DJ, I always knew I had a short shelf life. And I always looked at it as, what am I going to do beyond this? I was always looking
for the next thing.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed being the music director and hanging with the rock stars and the free tickets and the private planes and the backstage passes. But I knew, for me, it was going to end faster than it would for a male jock.
Definitely.
And so I was constantly networking and looking ahead. And then Charlie and I got married, and I was around NASA all the time. And my agent called he needed some NASA like hats and stuff for a client. And I said, well, the only place you can get them are on site at Kennedy Space Center or Johnson Space Center, which is where we live. And I'll have to go get it for you. And he said, well, that's crazy. They should start a website or something. And this was 1995. This was before everybody had a website. He said they should have a catalog or something. And I thought about it for 2 years. And so I actually left rock radio in '96 when Dak was born because we couldn't come to an agreement on maternity leave because it was not cool then.
Oh, and, wow, how times have changed.
So I ended up doing television for a while and decided I hated that because, you know, everybody's worried about how your bangs look instead of what you said. And I came from 22 years of ad-libbing. So reading a teleprompter on a news show, I could drive my producers absolutely insane because I could just go off on a tangent. And, you know, I hated that teleprompter. But then I got back into talk radio. But during all this, I couldn't forget what my agent had said. And finally, I thought, if I can't forget it, I might as well do something.
Right.
So we built a little website, did a little research, did my homework, went to the NASA store with my little baseball cap on and my piece of paper and my pen trying to figure out who made the hats and who made the shirts. And I started with 9 products. And by the time I sold the store to a NASA contractor in 2000 and ended up running it for them for 5 years. I think we must have had 1,000 different products, and I think we were doing over $1 million a year in sales. And
that's incredible.
I loved it. You know, I loved the fact that I had figured out that I could do more than play Stairway to Heaven. You know, there's something about when you're in radio and in television, you think you can't leave. When you've done it for that long, you're scared to death to try something new. And it was great fun. And, you know, my husband flies for NASA, so... you know, the astronauts were always around, and you know, they'd call from the space station, and it was kind of a cool because it was a different kind of rock star. It really was. And then I would get my rock star friends together with our astronaut friends, and then that was great fun to watch that too.
Key ingredient for you to shine above your competition.
It goes back to those 4 rock star principles that I applied, but I would have to say if I had to pick one thing, you know, I've already said passion because it's what I loved what I was doing. Reading. I just read everything I could get my hands on. So I could always talk about anything, anywhere, with anybody, anytime. And hard work. I wish I could tell people you know, people come to me and they say, in this economy, how can I get ahead? And, you know, how can I stand out in this economy? Work hard, be there, do your job, show up on time, do what you say you're going to do, give a quality product or a quality service.
You've also started another business, another website business.
I know, it makes my husband very nervous when I get up at 2 in the morning and start typing. Oh God, we're starting another company.
But this one's to empower young women.
Yep, Smart Girls Rock. It's a product line to encourage girls to make smart the new cool, or somebody said geek the new chic. So we have shirts that say like, Geek Goddess, Beautiful Mathematician, Madam President, I Can't Do What would a smart girl do?
Oh, great.
And that kind of came from when I was still running the space store. Parents would come in. We did it kind of backwards. We started in e-commerce, and then we did a brick and mortar. And people would come into the store and say, oh my God, this is so fabulous. I'm so glad I found this. Now where can I go buy something for a girl? And that would just send me off on a little, you know, on my soapbox. The next commander of the space shuttle is a woman, Eileen Collins, and your daughter has a better chance. Okay, listen closely. Your daughter has a better chance of being an astronaut than a princess. So buy her a science project, not a tiara. I was told in radio, You will always do nights or middays or overnights. You will never do morning drive. You will never do afternoon drive. And you will never make the money that the men make. And I thought, what? I can't do what? And I worked harder. I worked longer. I worked smarter. I networked. I did every charity that asked me to do anything. I always had a business card. I always had a picture to sign. Bam, bam, bam. I worked it 24/7, and I became the highest paid female jock in the country. And I did do morning drive. I hated it because I didn't want to get up those hours. And I did afternoon drive. But I loved my midday slot. But I was making 6 figures playing rock and roll records midday on a station in Houston. Don't tell me I can't do something. The ratings came out, and the afternoon DJ was making like, I don't know, probably 50% more than I was. I was doing middays.
Wow.
And the ratings came out, and I had, this was, before iPods and satellite radio and cable radio and all that. There were 2 rock stations to choose from in Houston, and that was it. And I had like a 47 share, adults 1854. I mean, half of the adults in Houston were listening to my show. And my ratings were like twice, if not more, than the afternoon drive jock. So I kind of figured out what they were, charging for commercials and things. So instead of going into the general manager and complaining about the inequality and the glass ceiling and the man and the woman, I said,
The broken record.
yeah, here's his ratings, here's my ratings. Here's what you're making off of him, here's what you could make off of me in afternoon drive. I'm just curious because I'm trying to learn more about the business side. With these numbers, why is he doing afternoon drive and I'm doing middays? And the general manager, I'll never forget, looked at me and went, well, I don't know. Those were his exact words. Well, I don't know. And the next day they announced I was being moved to afternoon drive.
Oh my goodness.
For the most part, I always say people want to see you succeed, but people can't read minds. You've got to tell them what you want and why they should give it to you.
What would you say is the worst mistake somebody can make in business, or even one of the rock stars has made in business, that really turned their life around?
I think one of the biggest mistakes anybody can learn is not learning from your mistake. To me, there's no such thing as a failure. There's no such thing as a mistake. One of my record people gave me a book once called "There Must Be a Pony," and for time's sake, I'll give you the abridged version. The 2 brothers walk up to the barn and they open the door and it's full to the rafters with poo. And the first brother goes, there's nothing but poo in here, and walks off. And the other brother looks at it and he studies it and he looks at it and he looks around and he thinks a minute and he grabs a shovel and he starts digging and says, there must be a pony. There's no such thing as failure. You're gonna have to make mistakes, and you're gonna have to dig through the poo.
It's the way you spin it.
Yeah, I mean, there's really, Thomas Edison said, what is it? I've never failed. I've only found 10,000 ways not to make a light bulb. So as long as you learn from it, I'd have to say probably the worst thing I ever saw, the worst mistake, is Robin Crosby, who was the gorgeous rock god of the band Rat. They were like, I call them the hair bands from the 80s. And Robin must have been 6'8", and he was just big and tall and had that gorgeous blonde mane of hair. And they sold so many records, and they sold so many concert tickets, and they made so much money. And that's great, but one of the things I even talk about in the book is you have to take care of yourself. And you've got to learn that, yeah, there's sex, drugs, and rock and roll. It's all in there. But you can't, you've got to take care of yourself. And if it was all sex, drugs, and rock and roll, we'd have a lot more dead rock stars. But Robin died penniless, homeless, and 400 pounds on the streets of L.A.
Whoa.
He made mistakes along the way. He was getting high. He knew it was wrong, and he didn't learn from the mistakes, and he lost a lot of money, and he still, the drugs, and, that's probably the biggest mistake I saw all through rock and roll, and it scared me, because I was around a lot of drugs, was I saw these people that lost everything, and that was the ultimate. That was such a sad story.
Said in the book, Rock to the Top, you've got to pay attention to the money and follow the money and sign the checks so that you do have control over it.
I remember Bill Cosby saying that it doesn't matter if it's $5 to the dog walker. It either has his or his wife's signature on it. No check goes out of the house. And I tell the story of Peter Frampton in the book, who lost all of his money from one of the best-selling live albums of all time, Peter Frampton Comes Alive. He was just paying no attention to the money. A friend of mine came to me the other day and said, yeah, you know, my husband handles all the money. I really don't know how much money we have. And I got this pit in my stomach. When you get married, that's a partnership. That's a commitment. Yeah. You know, you share bank accounts. And she goes, well, but you know, I'm not working. I'm staying at home with the kids, and it's his job. It's his money. Whoa.
Times have changed, lady.
So,
wake up.
I was stunned. So, you know, you gotta keep up with all the finances, and you know, it's kind of going off on a tangent here, but the cause of most stress and fractures in marriages and relationships boils down to money.
When women don't do that, it's like they grew up in a household where you didn't talk about money, but yet at the same time, it's a way of, I don't want to be bothered. I don't know. I don't want to be bothered.
You do want to be bothered.
You've got LinkedIn, you've got Plaxo, you've got Facebook, you've got Twitter, you've got this social network, you've got that.
Forget all of them, Twitter and Facebook, and then maybe LinkedIn.
I was going to say, how do you keep track of all of them, and what do you do on them all?
I'm fascinated, just like I was fascinated by the internet and e-commerce when it first started.
Right.
And then I got fascinated with search engine optimization, and now I'm absolutely enamored with Twitter and the power of Twitter. And I'll give you an idea how fast Twitter works. There's one particular guy that I follow on Twitter who actually lives here. He's a really great PR guy here in New York, Peter Shankman. And I follow Peter.
Yes.
I love Peter. And I follow him. I have his tweets sent to my phone. And it was like, OMG, there's a plane in the Hudson outside my apartment. I mean, it was 4 minutes later before CNN. The first tweet about the plane in the Hudson came from a passenger on the plane tweeting, we're going down in the Hudson. Twitter is fabulous. Facebook is an amazing community. It is the new way to network. If you're not utilizing it and not learning it, you're going to be left behind. And I don't mean just as an individual, I mean as a company. I was doing a crisis communication training for a chemical company in Texas a few weeks ago, and I told the plant manager, odds are when you do have an accident, the first picture or the first video that goes out without any control of yours is not going to be of malicious intent. It's going to be an employee letting their spouse know they're okay, and then this picture or this video is going to spread. He said, oh, well, that's not a problem. We don't allow cameras.
Oh.
I said, really?
Your phone?
Yeah. And I said, so instead of trying to fight it, you better learn how to embrace it. Work with your employees on when something does happen, how are you going to release the information on your own terms? How are you going to put out the information and use your employees as your eye reporters? You can't control the information anymore. You can't. You know, first thing in the morning, I check Twitter, I check Facebook, I check email.
Do you have a blog?
I have a blog, but I don't write every day. When every news outlet, CNN, ABC, CBS, all of them are saying, you know, follow us on Twitter, and you don't know what they're talking about, you better go find out. It's just managing your time.
What would you say would be the best clue to staying organized with LinkedIn, Plaxo? Well, not, okay, so you don't like Plaxo.
I don't even like Plaxo.
Okay. LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter.
Here's what I do is and you have to go in and figure this out. You can find it though. I have my blog set up so that when I blog,
yes,
it automatically tweets the first 140 characters or at the title,
okay,
you know, and like the first sentence, and that automatically feeds Facebook.
Ah.
So there's 3 groups taken care of immediately right there.
So you just do it once and it's...
Yeah, and then, you know, yesterday my youngest son took a picture with his award-winning artwork with the mayor of a little small town where we live. So I put that on Facebook. People on Twitter could care less what my 9-year-old's doing. The people on Facebook are more friends and friends of friends, and Facebook's more of your closer intimates. you have to approve people to be your friends on Facebook. Anybody can follow you on Twitter. Twitter is not for personal gain and self-promotion. It's for, look at this great article I found, and listen to what this person had a brilliant comment, or here's a funny picture, or there are ways to tie them in together. If there's something that I want to say that I feel like is okay for Twitter and Facebook, I'll put it on Twitter, and then it automatically propagates my Facebook.
That sounds easy.
You just got to get in there and play with it. You just got to play with it. But I promise you it's worth it. It's really great.
Dayna, in the closing moments of the show, what would you like to leave the audience with?
Again, I go back to passion. You know, I wake up every morning at 4:30 or 5, just dying to get out of bed, just dying to get the day going, because I love what I do so much. I love being a mom. There's a job. I always knew I wanted to have kids. I just never knew how much I'd like them. Somebody told me that should be the next book title. I love what I do. I love, I go around the country speaking to corporate groups and associations and conventions and women's groups and schools about find your inner rock star, which is really great because rock music really spans all the generations.
Yes,
so that's
it does.
nice. And, I just love what I do. And I feel so blessed that every morning I can get up and go, wow, what can I do today that's fun?
Oh, that's so great.
And I highly recommend it. Really, find something. Don't do it for the money. Do it for, I remember this banker coming up to me once saying, all I want to do is sing. Then I said, baby, go sing. Pay the bills, but go sing. So thank you for having me.
My pleasure. It's been great. Thank you for joining us. If you have any questions for Dayna or myself, you can write us here at The Woman's Connection. Love to hear from you. Bye now.